Ho 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 everyone and hello to the Metacast. We're back and it's Christmas time. As you can see, we have a new banner and we have a new vibe out here, celebrating the festive times. But thank you so much for joining us today. And today, with me and my co-host Taza, we have Nick joining us who's the founder of 49 Meta, and Nick is involved with Web3 concepts, strategy, and marketing. Thank you so much for joining us, Nick, today.
No, thank you for inviting me. Love to be here. Thank you.
Definitely. And Nick, your background, like I said, even before the podcast started, it looks phenomenal. I love it. Trust me. Today, the
Yeah,
podcast
it's
is actually in a first person perspective. So like our eyes are your view, right? So you can actually feel how it means to be, in the metaverse as an avatar. What do you see as an avatar? And this is like the first hand experience. So Nick, let's start off with this session. Could you introduce yourself to us and talk about what you're doing at 49 Meta and what's been happening around?
yeah, okay. Well, I'm indeed Nick. I founded with my colleague Kyle 49 Meta. Um, I'm what if, well, I'm a professional surfer. Well, that's actually something what my mom likes to call me when she tries to introduce me to her friends, and she needs to find a reason to explain how I make money. And she started out saying, "Well, he makes money surfing the internet." Well, okay, so I'm a professional surfer. Um, but that's exactly what I've did in the past. I'm old enough to have seen the start of Web 1, the first web and the iteration that came along. Did some business there. I found Web 2.0 with social media coming up. Did a lot of keynotes and as a public speaker. I did some business around of that, and now heavily involved and passionate about the rabbit hole called Web3.
Wow.
Nick,
Excellent.
n- yeah, Nick, just on the point of Web3, how is it different from Web 2 and Web 1? And why is it so important when we look 5, 10 years from now? The technology and infrastructure that allows Web3 to um, solve some of the world problems.
Well, that's a big challenge, solving world's problems. Um, but anyway, it's a good question to see if what's different. This is what I've seen is what we saw the first internet, the first web was one directional. Just the nerds and the geeks were able to put out code and program, and the rest of us were just consumer of information. And I know back then there was a lot of hesitation of brands, corporates, companies saying, well, do I really need a website? I remember a discussion with one of our clients at the moment, at that time, that was a fashion retailer. And who said to me, well, Nick, I think that's cool, the concept that you're offering us with the website and those kind of things, but fashion and internet, who's going to buy fashion on the internet? Well, we all know how that went, of course. Um, I think that the iteration that came along with Web 2.0 was fascinating. We're still in the middle of it, of course, but what you saw is that first time people could really participate in the internet without knowledge of any coding or programming whatsoever. You had the Facebook and Twitter, Google, all sort of platforms that you could just use for free and build a personal brand or your company or your business within it. So that was what we call the participation web. Um, but what we also saw is if things are free, probably you are the product. And that's something that we saw, of course, that platforms monetizing our data um, to build their business. And we became heavily dependent on those kind of platforms using our data. And if they change something in the algorithm, that might hurt our business as well. So we became too much dependent, I think, on central powers, central businesses. And the latest years, we saw the upcoming of blockchain as technology, of course, the first in cryptocurrency. Or we saw a punk anarchy movement of people saying, is this how the world should be? Is this how the internet should be? Just governed by some great platforms that we're completely dependent on. Shouldn't be more decentralized like blockchain as a technology is? And can we be more part of it? Can we be a stakeholder? Can we be a shareholder? And that's something what you see in Web3 is about ownership, being able to own a bit of the success of a company or a project. And that's something I believe will change the world. Yeah.
Sounds great.
Interesting. Yeah.
Also, I think as you mentioned, Nick, it's an amazing thing that you said. I wanted to ask you upon it. You said that when how should I put it? When everything comes for free, you are the product. That's something which we've encountered. I think now because of more abundance of information, a lot of people have started questioning brands like Meta, and all the big key players who are playing around with data. What do you see in terms of this pivotal move? When these conversations keep happening around Web3, a lot of people keep saying that this is a new move from Meta to consume data. A lot of things that are happening. There's a good side and there's a bad side. What do you think about the hype? The hype of Web3 that's happening right now. Of course, we've seen transitions in blockchain. We've seen NFTs. We've seen cryptocurrencies. Of course, everyone's aware of what's happened around the world. They might not know about cryptocurrencies, but they do know about SBF and FTX. So, like, what's your take on this hype? What's happening around in the consumer's mind?
Well, I think with all technology comes new culture and comes hype. It's a Gartner curve all over again, always. Um, the only thing is that the hype was based especially last year. I think 2021 was a breakthrough of NFTs and Web3 as technology and as a use case with NFTs. Is that you saw the hype about speculation, about the financial value of NFTs and tokens. You saw the Bored Apes, the CryptoPunks, those kind of things. You could buy it at the beginning at $350, and then it ended up now at more than $100,000. And that was a hype. That was pure speculation on tokens, very close to cryptocurrencies. I think it's a good thing that the hype is over. The bubble had burst so soon, because now it's time to see the real value of what the tokenized economy can be. And how we see it is we believe in Wagami. Wagami is one of the creators, one of the slogans within the Web3 community, and it stands for we are all going to make it. And at first it meant we're all going to make it, we're going to get rich buying NFTs and selling NFTs. But what the real meaning should be is we are all going to make it to we. So how can you be, as a brand, as a company, be more Wagami? How can you involve your clients? How can you involve your customers in sharing the success of the project that you're doing? And basically, the Bored Apes are a Wagami project. If you just set aside the hype and set aside the speculation value, what they did was tremendous. Is that they said, well, if you buy this Bored Ape, we're going to give you full exploitation rights, full copyright over that image. And we allow people to make something different about it and build a business from it. And we've seen fast food restaurants, we've seen vodka brands, shoe brands are coming out of nothing just by the NFT holders of a Bored Ape. And that's what Wag.me and that's what Web3 is all about. How can you make sure that not just you are successful, but also the other people buying into your project, or buying into your brand, make them successful too, by allowing them to do more than they have done before, for example.
Definitely, I also
If you
think
understand what I mean.
definitely I do. When you say about Bored Apes, I think this is one thing that when it comes around NFTs, I think we had another session very recently with Sergio, who really shared with us the perception, the user perception of what it means to buy an NFT. So all the NFT holders, how they define the utilization of their asset. Of course, from hearing from you, it was very clear that a lot of these NFTs are just not they are brands themselves. Like if you're owning an NFT, it's like you just bought a brand identity, right, for your own concept. So it's like you're opening a restaurant, you already have the branding in place. You know the token is the brand itself, and that's a really good move. That a very good perspective that is placed in a commercial perspective to understand what it means to have what it means to have an NFT with you and what it means to create value out of what you own. Definitely. That's what do you say?
No, I agree. I agree with what Nick's talking about. And it relates back to a podcast session we had with Sergio, who relayed a message around NFTs and blockchain, and essentially at some point in time, it's going to get to a point when we're not even going to call these technologies what they are called right now. They're just going to become so innate and integrated into what we do on a daily basis. Just how we've seen with Web 2 over the last few decades. Um, Nick, in terms of Web3, what industries will it likely disrupt, or will it perhaps from your point of view, do you think every industry will see some form of disruption with these technologies?
Well, I think it may be it may be disruptive to some cases. Um, if there is an unbalance between in the value chain. For example, what you see now is for example, in music is a great example. And if you want to look up the documentary or the series on Netflix, the playlist about Spotify, um, you hear it there as well, is when there is a misplacement of power, a misplacement of revenue streams within one middleman, those middlemen are always going to be disrupted. And for example, music labels, how they used to work with artists is that they take 80% almost of all revenues, and the artist just ends up 20%. And of course, the labels put in the work for it, that they try to sell the brand or the band and brand, for example, and see for distribution and those kind of things. But that's not how it should be. It's the creator, it's the musician who should get the most of it. And what you now see is, what we now see is that artists, musicians can offer NFTs um, in music, so they can just sell directly to their fan zones, meaning that there is no middleman, and they get a better fan engagement than they could do with Spotify, for example, or whatever they do. And that's definitely something that you're gonna see is those kind of middlemen, um, where they don't give value enough to who's responsible for the value. They are always going to be disrupted. That's definitely
Mhm.
something that you see.
No, I agree. Web3, the technology removes the middleman, the intermediate, and just allows for a deeper sense of connection between the end user and the person providing the service or a product, or in this case, the music. Um,
Yeah,
Adi,
absolutely.
any sharing points?
Yes, of course. And when it comes to music, yeah. Um, Nick, you shared with us the idea of the project that you're working on, which is called Buscemi Beats, right? Tell us more about it. I mean, it's amazing. I saw the website. I saw like there's definitely, it's like you create the concept itself. You start mixing, you become a featured artist, and you get rewarded for it. I think it's an amazing way to convey a user journey. And I was just going through, so for people who are watching this right now, if you can go to busemibeats.xyz, you can see Nick's project right now of how things are working. It's a really unique concept of how NFTs are being offered to users, and it's from a music perspective. Nick, of course, over to you. How would you explain that?
Well, first of all, in core, we are a consultancy agency, and thus we try to educate Web3 to businesses, corporates, brands, musicians, artists, whatever. And we try to find concepts and strategies that would fit within their own strategy, not just as a separate project, but to see how the WAGMI philosophy that we want to do could fit within the brand. And one of those things is what I said, is how can you cooperate and collaborate better with customers, for example. And in this case, it was music. We wanted to do projects ourselves, a Genesis project, because then most of the consultants just talk about things and just on a theoretical level. Or we want to be invested as well into a project and to do it from A to Z to see where the things are in every phase. And what we did is we worked together with a known artist in Belgium, but he's performed and played all over the place in the world, on the biggest festivals in the world, like Tomorrowland, Pickle Pop, Burning Man, and those kind of things. But he was looking in how can I adopt Web3. I've heard about it. I've heard about NFTs. How should I approach it? Because he really wanted to have a great connection with their friends. And we made a concept of saying, well, how can we let people, your fans and music lovers in general, but also DJs, how could we make music together? And so what we basically did is he made 5 basic tracks for us, 5 themes: Latin theme, Miami theme, Bossa Nova, Balkan, those kind of things. And he made a basic track, and we fractionalized all the samples within that track. So a synth, drum roll, a vocal, bass, those kind of small pieces of sound. And basically what we offer in the Bashimi Beats collection is 3,000 samples, different samples that people can collect, can buy per 5, can mint per 5. And then we invite people to go to a composer website, the DApp, decentralized app, which is a mixer that you can just connect with your wallet and start playing with it, because he sees what you already bought, the tracks that you have or the samples that you have, and you just drag and drop into a mixer and make your own music. And that's definitely the first phase that we want to do, is increase fan engagement and introduce the music of Buscemi to the people who love those kind of music, electronic music.
Excellent. I think it's really exciting. I think it's something which it drives me. I was a little bit involved with the music industry, like as a a DJ or something like that when I was a kid. Because I was like, I want a demo drop account. I want to make something and I want to put out my files and everything. And I think demo drop is now dead. Of course, they shut down, but long back it was one place where you could find a lot of samples and you could definitely pick up a lot of assets. I think this is the one new perspective for people who are in this industry, who could really explore and understand how they can create value from such assets. An amazing thing is the fact that when I visited the website, I was easily intrigued because I could understand the user journey and what it means to do something like this. Nick, I think it's one of the I think we had a conversation, we had an introduction call today, and one of the things that I just messaged Taza, once the call was done, was the fact that the biggest collaborator of the consumer journey is the consumer itself. And that's what I think, that's a big gap, is I call it brand gap in the Web3 space, which a lot of brands don't understand. I think this is one thing. When I went to the website, I wanted to know, the first thing that I see as a consumer is like, if I see that the minting is open for these NFTs and for these assets, what it means for me as a user to be a part of this journey.
Yeah.
If that is defined, and if that makes sense to me as a user,
Yeah.
because of course I gained curiosity through some form of information which was relevant to me. So if I'm progressing through the funnel, it is very important for me to understand, yeah, okay, this is step 1, this is step 2, this is step 3. After step 3, I get something. And that's something that I saw here. It was really well mentioned. So it's a really strong element that you've shared, and I loved it. I would be, I'll share the link on the description as well for this video, for Buscemi Beats, for people to explore this project, because of course it means a lot for you to speak about this project with us. And yeah, it's a strong element, of course. Taza?
It was just to set an example of what can be done. It's a large experiment, and it's an open mint, so it's not about minting out in 24 hours. It's an open mint. People can still minting, because the album. What I didn't mention, of course, is that Buscemi as an artist is going to make an album in April, May of next year, based on the tracks that people are making. He will select 5 of those tracks that have been minted by people on the website to be a featured artist on his next album. So that's something in that what we call the emotional level of value of adding something to an NFT, that it could be really a co-featuring artist on the next album and get royalties. It's not just being narcissistic or being introduced as a DJ or a musiker, but also get the benefits of the revenues out of that album as well. And just by starting minting beats and going through the process and getting that album. Of course, you get the album if you buy the beats. You can burn the beats and get an album for free, which normally will be a lot of money. So that's the whole process that we want to do, is be collaborator, like you said, not just the brand and the consumer, but mix them together and be really
exactly.
part of a journey.
I,
That's exactly what we do.
I think it's really cool. You found a way to allow the end user to collaborate and co-create with the artist for these fractionalized NFTs. I'm a massive music fan. Every year Spotify releases different things you've done throughout the year on your Spotify account. And I spent 116,000 minutes the whole year listening to music, and it tells you which fans. So that's 99.99% more than anyone in the UK, and it tells me, oh, this artist, you're at the top 0.0005% of their
Yeah,
of the most music you spent listening to their the music they've released. It'd be so cool if there was a way to interact with them, engage with them, sort of like, yeah. And I think fractionalized NFTs is a fantastic way to find a way to collaborate with them. I think it's really cool, and I would definitely personally on a consumer level, if I saw something, if I saw my favorite artist doing something like this, I'm very much inclined to get involved, understand how I could add some sort of help, if any. But yeah, I think it's really cool, Nick.
I think since you mentioned this, KSI was one person who was really close to this, to be honest. Because at the moment of course, he has a big YouTube following. He has been investing in NFTs for a long while, and yeah, I think he set a big example for influencers to really get into this space. I think the next move that I probably see, of course, he's fighting Dylan Danis next month. There's so much happening around this place. I think with influencers like these getting into the whole space, it's a really big point that if they take the first move into tokenizing and fractionalizing their entire process and their entire presence and the assets that they provide on digital platforms, it's going to change the way people actually become loyal and to these influencers and personalities. I think, as we rightly mentioned, Nick, it's one thing that's with what the Buscemi project is actually putting forward with the assets and how available the project is for users. This could potentially change the way we are seeing engagement happening with such influencers and people who really have a big following.
Yeah,
And I
I
think, yeah,
think of it. Yeah, I'm also thinking of it in another way as well, Adi. On top of what you just said, I went to a Christine Loeffler concert in London a while back. He didn't play my favorite song from all his tracks, and that really annoyed me. But I thought perhaps with Web3 there could have been a voting option on what he played on that day, right?
absolutely,
yeah,
absolutely.
It's a different. So ticket holders could actually vote on the sort of songs are played based off the what they actually enjoy and what they listen to on a mass level, which is, yeah.
definitely. I think, yeah, it's an amazing concept. Since you mentioned, artists need to know this.
Oh, they do.
Definitely. Because it's customized. It's customized. The experience is customized, and it's based on what the user is already primed, right? And
Mm,
like I use this word in neuromarketing, I call it priming. And I think the word priming is a really strong word, because it's something where the user is already aware of what he or she is going to experience, so the satisfaction starts even before the experience has already begun. The experience
mm,
begins. So like it's amazing what you really said. If you were in that situation, and if you could have a system of voting for it. Of course, DAOs has come into place now. All these things could really potentially change the way how we're engaging with even
yeah.
celebrities. You have your own form of engagement with them because
There's a
you're
deeper
equally involved.
connection. Yeah. There's such a deeper connection already to be built off as a foundation, and these technology just further enhance that and accelerate that sort of connection with the
Yeah,
celebrity, with the artist, with the musician, you name it. It's a wide spectrum of people that it just, yeah. I think there's a deeper level of connection that can be built with Web3, and music is a prime example of an industry that will be tapped into, and will see massive disruption. Um,
100%. I couldn't
Yeah,
agree more,
definitely.
man.
Nick,
Yeah, absolutely.
Nick, the metaverse, does it exist? Where are we? And what is it? Where do you see this heading?
Well, you guys are in the metaverse, so I'm not, like you see. Well, it's if you Google metaverse, it says it's a fictional world. So fictional meaning doesn't exist. I see a lot of potential in virtual worlds, indeed. I see the benefit of doing this in an avatar way, which is way better than zooming and those kind of things. But the metaverse doesn't exist yet because the metaverse is decentralized. My opinion is that if you want to build a virtual world next to the real world, in the real world we have assets, we have ownership, we have our own social identity with us. And that's something which is definitely not possible in Meta, definitely not possible in Fortnite or Roblox or those kind of things, because that's central basic worlds that they own everything. You just rent your space, you rent your digital assets. If Fortnite decides to delete a skin, it's gone. You bought it, but it's gone. And that's not what the metaverse should be. So I'm still waiting for, I know there's Decentraland and those kind of things, but that's not heavily populated yet. But really looking forward to vertical meta spaces. Explanation, for example, I know that universities like Yale are really looking into the metaverse, which makes sense because 90% of graduates of those kind of universities have never studied actually at Yale physically. Most are online courses, and most have get a good degree on a digital level. So it makes sense that there would be perfect metaverse world, or virtual world of Yale that you can visit and have a better experience than you have now with just Zoom classes and online classes. So I do believe in vertical meta spaces. Metaverses is even a bigger thing, but if it's NFT based, if it's Web3 philosophy, then I think it has a chance, but we're far from it at the moment because business models of the current virtual worlds, they don't want NFTs, they don't want to share, they have no WAGMI thinking. They just want to benefit from it and earn a lot of money. That's just my take on it.
Right, definitely. I think it's a really strong point as you mentioned, Nick. It's like, when you say it's a fictional world, of course I've seen the same definition on Google. It's like, I think our identities, me and Taza, we actually have our names saved as like the names that you can see right now, and even the
Yeah.
fact that I think how we engage with the world, my even in the real world, I am known more as Addy than my original name, which is Aditya, and it's just transitioning to that point where you're the way you define yourself is the identity you're carrying. So I think it's like the metaverse, of course, is not yet here, but the people who are now engaging with metaverse environments have started to incorporate values of metaverse environments in their real life, which brings connectivity to a point where their form of definition of how they want to present themselves is evolving. This is something that I saw on Roblox. This is something that I saw on Decentraland, and when we went to Rec Room as well. There's a pivotal change in a person's mindset of how they want to present themselves, and this could potentially be a same thing in real life. That's what actually we noticed in the movie Ready Player One as well, right? If you see Ready Player One is we always feel like, okay, how do we create the oasis, quote unquote, of Ready Player One in a decentralized reality? That's what the goal is, right? But it's like the user that we have genuine proof in terms of how these stories were written, how Snow Crash came into place, how people are doing research. My own research proves the user pivot into the metaverse, which is very positive. I did things and it came out to be true. The only thing that I see right now from how the metaverse, as you mentioned, is it's not there, but the users, if it was explained to them in a form where they could derive value, they will pivot, and they will pivot faster than brands themselves. So it's like, I think we are in a bustle where we are trying to understand the tech, and of course tech cycles take time, But
Mm.
now when looking at the user, there is intent, but there is the brands are not able to provide value, so there's always this friction and it goes away. So I think education, as you rightly mentioned, I went into Stanford University's metaverse environment on Engage VR. It's an extremely good concept, and I think it's probably one of the most enterprise friendly concepts that I've seen for the metaverse. It's like yeah, I think as you rightly mentioned, there is a pivotal shift. Education is potentially a big pivot that we have seen, and yeah, I think once the bridge between consumers and brands have been solved with more tech cycles coming in, which is a new word I learned today, I think it's gonna solve a lot of problems in terms of how we understand this space. Nick,
Mm.
back to you, of course. What do you feel
No,
about this?
very true. And again, the magical word that you mentioned is again value, and that's the most important thing. And okay, with every hype, it's the same. Is that you see technology misused for brand campaigns, PR. That's what we see a lot. We see a lot of metaverse-ish projects, but are basically just PR campaigns and having just a small virtual experience and has an end date. Um, I think once brands or companies or governments, yes, please, really accept that virtual reality could help their business and help the interaction between them and their customers or them and their students, if it's about Stanford, um, and enhance the experience that they now have in real life, um, and add value, then we're talking. Then I see what the possibilities could be. But then again, it should be like identity. Identity is major important, and we saw it already in social media that people will create their own identity on social media, which is different from their in real life identity, and that has pros and cons, of course. And that's something that you see in the metaverse and VR as well. But it's definitely something that I want to own. I want my own social identity. I'm not very keen to use my identity borrowed by Meta. I don't trust Meta. I don't trust the data, what they're doing with it. I don't trust what people could be or AI could be walking around. So I think that social identity proof by my wallet, for example, is key for real acceptance of a metaverse idea.
100%. I couldn't agree more.
Mm.
Definitely couldn't agree more.
Mm. Nick, are we gonna see in let's say 5 to 10 years down the line, are we gonna see a situation like Ready Player One, when there's perhaps a, an, a virtual world like Oasis that comes into fruition, and there's billions of users, but there's an element of dystopia, like you said. You don't trust Meta with your data, and rightly so, of course. Um, but what do you see as a likely outcome further down the line? Of course, it's a bit difficult to tell right now, but there's so many people creating digital virtual worlds, 3D world at this point in time, big, small players included. And I think at some point, users are going to start, or consumers are going to want some element of interoperability between the different worlds. But yeah, how big of a role does these big digital 3D worlds, how big of a role will they play further down the line?
Yeah, that's going to be interesting. And then, like you said, is it utopian or is dystopian? If you look at Ready Player One, um, I do believe that what we're going to see in the first in 5 years' time is those vertical metaverses. I think that that's going to be around education, about entertainment, I see a lot of cool things on music, for example, as well, on sports, on mixed reality, AR and VR, and I think that Apple is going to play a big role in the mixed reality area. Um, the one big role world to rule them all, I hope it never exists because it's dystopian idea. It's there's always a central power behind it. I don't think that you can do it decentralized because, let's be honest, democracy doesn't work always. Look at America's with Donald Trump. it was a democracy, and even that guy could become president. Um, so I do hope the one world doesn't exist, and it would be just interest based in 10 years time.
Yeah, agreed.
That's a good
It,
perspective.
it may
And it's
look
a very valid perspective.
decentralized on the outside, but fundamentally it's controlled by centralized powers. If these
Mm.
metaverses come into fruition, and at that point it's not a utopia, is it? It really isn't. It's the
Yeah.
same it's Web 2 all over again.
Well, yeah, Meta started out great. It was good intentions, and most companies, Spotify as well, if you look at it, the intentions was great. But when it becomes too big, it's governed by VCs, it's governed by money, by business models, by an economy, and everything changes over time when companies become big. Um, so that's that's my biggest fear of a metaverse becoming so big that that's going to be an oasis for those kind of things. Or look at back in time, there was a lot of futuristic films that we saw, and everyone is talking about a dystopian future when you're talking about virtual reality, and that's always when it's governed by one.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yeah. I agree. Like I said, I would not agree with any point that has been. It was not. I think it's everything that we're discussing right now is of course there's this point where we are agreeing, and we are also seeing a very different perspective of how we are envisioning the metaverse, but it's also very different to what we see. I think decentralization is also from I think interoperability was a very good point that came along in Matthew Ball's book as well, Metaverse and how it could bring out possibilities for the future. But it's up to these companies, the tech companies, and how they integrate brand presence. Gucci was one example which really went through in terms of Gucci Vault. It was they did it on Roblox. They went ahead and they focused on Decentraland as well. I think it's something which it's I think it's a brand perspective. It's a brand's perspective to provide the same experience in as I think it's one thing that rightly comes into place when metaverse is now an omni channel than just a platform itself for brands to showcase and create conversations and engagement. It's a very strong point. I think it's Nick. I think when it comes to decentralization, you're absolutely right. I think it's one thing that breaks the ice in terms of what we have spoken about in a lot of times and what could be the reality, right? So
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. So, great. So, Nick, of course, we could have so many conversations around this. I think we've had an excellent session today, and once again, thank you so much for joining us for the session. You are now part of the Metacast family, so yeah, we will be
Welcome.
Thank you.
having more
I'm
speaker
honored.
sessions.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're just a bunch of kids, to be honest. We're just 25-year-olds. Not kids though, but yeah, they're still getting there. But of course, we love it when we speak to people like you, and within these spaces who, and the good part is as we've progressed along the sessions, we're trying to break the ice in terms of how users understand the metaverse, how a consumer as a layperson understands the metaverse, and how they could potentially engage with this community of people like us who could guide them and who could show them the way of what value means to them, what perceived value means to them for every project or product or token that they engage with. It's I think now it's like now we are reaching the threshold. Of course, we know what the metaverse is. Now it's the time when we have to understand where do we find value within the space. And that's where I think
Exactly.
your projects, the way you've presented, the Buscemi case and how it's turning out as a conversation between both of us, all three of us, it was excellent. I think it's one of the most broken down sessions that I would say we have had today, right, Taza?
Yeah, agreed. I've really enjoyed this session, Nick. It's been easy to understand, it's just flowed organically, and I think people tuning in will appreciate that as well.
Right.
Nick, thank you for joining us. We've really enjoyed the session. Thank you once again.
Thank you,
No,
Nick.
me too. Really exciting to talk about passionate people like you guys. So really love your concept. on the Metacast. So I'm definitely gonna tune in the next episodes, and maybe another occasion I will join you in the Metacast in
Yeah,
the
absolutely.
Metaverse.
Please
Yes.
have a mulled wine with us, because of course it's Christmas time, and we of course love it. We love to have people join us in the same room and sit with us. Taza and I are now in the same city, of course, guys. If you didn't know, I was living in Delhi. We were still in the same room in the Metaverse, but the good part was me and him were in different cities, and now we're in the same city. So it's you're gonna see a LinkedIn post where we're actually together in real life, and yeah, we're gonna have some great conversations around these things. But Nick, once again, thank you so much. Christmas time is here, and I'm really hope you enjoy with your family, and have a good time around this Christmas, and we will as well, of course. And
Absolutely.
guys, we'll be back with more conversations, with more episodes. This one's gonna be on LinkedIn Live as well. So if you're seeing this, yes, this is a LinkedIn Live, and you can enjoy it. But great, thank you so much, guys.